Welcome to Season 2 of ADHD Difference. I'm your host, Julie Legg, ADHD advocate, author of The Missing Piece, A Woman's Guide to Understanding, Diagnosing and Living with ADHD, and an unapologetic doer of many things. This season, we're turning up the volume with a global lineup of brilliant guests, bringing their lived experiences, insights, research, strategies, and resources. And of course, along with a healthy dose of humour and humility. Whether you're neurodivergent yourself or just curious, there's something here for every curious brain. Let's dive in. My guest today is someone who wears many hats. Meet Randi-Lee Bowslaugh. She's an author, YouTube host, speaker, and passionate mental health advocate. She's also a former competitive kickboxer, diagnosed with autism in 2021. Today, we're talking about neurodivergence, crossovers, and shared traits of autism and ADHD, and the power of sharing your truth. Welcome to the show, Randi-Lee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Most welcome. Look, let's start with your personal journey. You know, you've spoken before about feeling different, but not quite knowing why until your autism diagnosis as an adult. So what was your journey and what was it like to receive that moment of clarity finally?
Yeah, so when I was little, in elementary school, there was a group of only like 5 girls or whatever. So we obviously were friends. And because it was just a very small school, it wasn't as weird because we all grew up the same. You didn't have new kids come in, there was no big changes in there. So you didn't notice things that way until in grade 5 there was a new girl and things changed. And I couldn't figure out how this was going to work and how it would integrate in, and I could not wrap my head around it. That was probably one of the biggest, or as my kid likes to say, core memories of it, because it was one of the biggest changes. Other things were the sensory overload stuff. People, I would be what my mom would say, freak out, because she didn't know what it was. And people would be like, oh, you spoil her. It's just because she's spoiled. And I was like, that has nothing to do with that. Like, she didn't even ask for anything, and she's freaking out, and I don't know what to do. And then I would end up being sequestered. That's the nice way to say it. Sequestered into my bedroom until I would calm down, because my mom had no idea what was going on, because it wasn't that I was saying, hey, I want something, and then being told no, and you're having a temper tantrum. It would just kind of come out of the blue, and I would just be screaming, and I couldn't articulate it. My mom had no idea what was happening. People would just say she's spoiled, needs more discipline. So, it was kind of really frustrating growing up that way. And then as I got older, you learn how to, I think many people with autism, we learn how to mask and do what is expected. Even if you have no idea why you're doing it, you're just doing it because, okay, in a situation similar to this is what happens. Therefore, I must do this again. And so I would kind of play that role, but still never quite understanding why people are doing what they're doing and that kind of thing. So I just went with it. So then finally, as an adult, I got the diagnosis, and I didn't do it until after my kid, who had been diagnosed at a young age, said to me, Mom, if I have autism, so do you. And I went, huh, yeah, you're probably right. So I went and I was able to go and talk to the doctor and to go through the big, long assessment and everything. And she goes, yes, and writes it all out. And I go, I feel really vindicated right now, because my whole life, people were, trying to tell my mom I'm spoiled or do this and whatever. And none of that was the case. And I was like, yes, I knew I wasn't spoiled.
That moment of clarity, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Already, we're going to be talking about it shortly, but already I can see the similarities between ADHD and autism. And masking, as you said, number one, particularly for females, young girls growing up, this observation, and, we're masters of observation, really, aren't we? Looking at our peers as what would be deemed correct behavior. So, yeah, and I
Exactly.
can absolutely see that. And do you see the similarities between you and your child? Now
Oh,
you know,
yes. But
yeah.
before I even knew about me, people would say stuff and be like, well, what are you talking about? It's just not weird. She's acting like I did. I said that so much before the diagnosis. I was like, oh, yeah, that would be why that makes sense now.
And you also have suffered depression, though, feelings that you had to
Yes.
push through that. How was that for you?
Yeah. So I would say it all started probably way back when I was a teenager, and
Mm,
I think they really go hand in hand. And a lot of people with autism or ADHD, they do have that dual diagnosis with something else because that
mm,
feeling of not fitting in or not knowing what to do, it's really easy to feel depressed or anxious or any of those other
mm,
things. So, like I said, lots of similarities, and that's
mm,
one of them, that comorbidity with something else. Um, and now that I'm an adult, I mean, I do take antidepressants, which is a big help, but I also think accepting who I am in all aspects
mm,
really helps too to deal with that depression. So again, you're talking about how did I feel with that diagnosis? Great, because I had a reason, I had
mm,
understanding, and then I was able to pull that into my whole, I don't want to say personality, but like my whole understanding of who I
mm,
was.
mm. And that's so important, isn't it? Understanding yourself, finally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you've had a really multifaceted life. You've done competitive kickboxing and coaching and writing and your advocate work. How do you see your neurodivergence showing up in the work that you do and your creativity?
Um, all over the place. I mean, just talking to you right now, I think that that neurodiversity is what gives me this fun vibes whenever I have interviews. I mean, yes, I often am looking elsewhere because that is one of the big signs with it. But it's this energy that I bring that makes me entertaining, I think. Um, and just being able to bring that creativity to like the writing, I can think, I'm not, I can, I always think outside the box. I don't like living in the box. So always thinking outside the box and being able to bring really cool stories even though I do write a lot about like nonfiction, I share my story a lot in my books, and it still has that twist because I'm looking through the lens of somebody who has lived it and sharing it that way, as opposed to not necessarily boring because I love, like, I took psychology in school, I love all that stuff, but it's not as clinical. Right? When you're reading someone's story about how they came to figure out who they are. So
Mm,
being able to put that kind of fun, creative, conversational style into the book, just like what we're doing. I write like you're talking to me.
that's great. That's great. And it's that sense of difference too in your writing style stands out, which it makes your writing unique as well, which is brilliant. And tell me about your podcast, The Write or Die Show.
Yes, so I've been doing that now 4 years. Um, just like you, very conversational style, which is my favorite. You get the raw, real stuff when you do it that way. And I interview other people across the world, as you know, is so much fun. And we talk about their mental health journeys and or neurodevelopmental journeys. So anywhere from autism, ADHD to depression, to bipolar. Last week I had somebody who talked about dyslexia. So all sorts, like the whole realm of it all, we talk about, which is really cool. And it really comes down to what they went through and
Mm.
where they've come and how they're coping and what strategies really work for them. And I for myself have pulled little bits and stuff. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. Let me try that one. So it's fun.
Yeah, sharing strategies is really important, and I'll be asking you for one shortly too. But yeah, the more we can have in our toolbox, the more we can tweak them or adapt them or adopt them or whatever we choose to do. So yeah, just hearing other people's inspirations really, really good. I'd like to talk to you now about the similarities between autism and ADHD because
Yes.
for many people, especially women, we're diagnosed late because our traits, whether it is ADHD or autism, can overlap, or one could outshout the other, or it could be completely misunderstood. And so I want to chat to you about the similarities that you might notice between the two, because I know that you've got a lot to do with
Yes.
ADHD too in your world.
Yeah. So my daughter actually was diagnosed with ADHD first, before they came full circle and said it was autism.
Ah,
And they kept the ADHD diagnosis because they, again, often go together. Um, so some of the really big ones, I mean, the sensory processing, organization, right? Organizing all the thoughts and the to-do lists. Um, they're very hard to organize. It's a lot of executive functioning is shared amongst the two of looking at in certain areas, the time management, emotional regulation, so many of those overlap on the two, which is again why it's so hard to get the right diagnosis because all of those things look so similar.
mm,
And I'm going to say, especially in females, because, like we said, masking in both, again, autism, ADHD, masking is
mm.
huge. And females tend to pick up on that skill without us even realizing we're doing it at a very young age. Because again, a feminine trait is being quiet, is being reserved, is just, you are seen and not heard. Well, ADHD and autism, we get distracted easily, both can, or hyperfixated on, say, the dog in the room. Well, now you're seen and not heard because you're busy petting the dog and you don't even care what everyone else is doing because there is a dog, right? And so it's perceived as okay, they're just more of a dog person. It's fine, but in all reality, it's I am hyper focused on this, or I prefer this activity, or this is easier for me to handle than being with this group of people. So a lot of overlap there.
Absolutely. And misdiagnosis too, whether it's depression or anxiety, or whether, as your daughter had experienced, whether ADHD or autism, which one is it? Now, for ADHD, there is a specific assessment tool called the Diva 5 that's used around the world. Is there a specific autism assessment process?
I want to say yes, but I do not know the name of it off the top of my head. But there is like the same thing, like a checklist of things that they go
Mm,
through and what they're looking for and where you rate on the scale.
mm.
It just eludes me the name of it at the
That's right.
moment. But yeah, I know for both my daughter and mine, and I believe that they do have two separate ones for adults and children for it. Because again, by the time you've lived with it for as long as adults, you present much differently because you've learned so many different other masking coping strategies. Um, but it's not done in one little appointment. It is,
Mm.
and it's very similar where it's an accumulation of time because you need to see the person in different situations. Do they act like this at home and at school and at work and in the public? It's not just one location. So it's over time and over environments.
Exactly the same as ADHD assessment, yes.
Exactly.
And so again, you've got to look back into your younger years to give examples of how autism would have been present at that time. Was that easy for you to recall, or did you need assistance from school reports or parents or
Uh,
neighbors?
it was easy because my mom loves telling the stories about some of my freakouts when I was little, specifically the McDonald's incident. My brother used to love bringing up the McDonald's incident, and I kept trying to explain to him. So, okay, let me tell you what it was because it's a little bit of a funny story now that I'm an adult. Okay, McDonald's has the little toys that go in the Happy Meals, and they have the display case with all of the toys. Okay. I got one of the ones that I already had, so I asked them if I switch it, which I've done in the past, which they have switched out. So in my, I want to say 5, 6, kind of like really young. I only remember this because of what everyone else says. I don't actually remember it. So I'm very little. And now that I know that I have autism, it all pieces fall together. So I asked them to switch it. They said, no, they can't. What do you mean? Well, we don't have it. What do you mean? We don't have it. But it's literally right here. And I had a complete meltdown because I could not grasp what they were saying. I can literally see it in the box here. And they also had a line of them up on the shelf. I remember that part. I remember seeing them on the line on the shelf, aside from in the actual display case. I'm like, but it's there. why can't you switch it? It's there. And they're like, no, but we can't, but it's there, right? And so that's one of the biggest memories I have where it's so very obvious that I wasn't understanding it. And yet people were just saying I'm having a temper tantrum. Now that I'm an adult, I'm like, well, if they would have just explained to me it's for the display and it's not for the public, I probably would have got it. I mean, yeah, I was little, but even a little kid can understand that. But
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't but nobody took the time to give me that information. So that's probably the biggest one that always comes to mind. But yeah, there was definitely some stories that my mom and family always shared over the years, so it didn't take me too long or hard to find those examples.
We've covered off some similarities between autism and ADHD. I'd like to add to that with a yes or no from you, rejection sensitivity.
Yes. So this is a funny, I'm going to say funny one, only because I feel like it's one that people don't often talk about or often overlook as just being, oh, you're just too sensitive.
Mm.
And it's right in the title, rejection sensitivity. But it's more than just, oh, you're too sensitive. It's literally you just automatically assume a rejection is going to happen. Um, so that you don't necessarily go and ask the question. You don't try and go and do the things because you automatically think, and that's already making you feel bad. Then, of course, if you were to add in, if you had a comorbidity with anxiety or depression,
Mm.
right, like it just blows it out of the water. And that is a big commonality between the two. Um, yeah.
I have another one, and that is, how are you finding sleep? Is sleep issues
Mm,
a thing?
sleep. They are more of a thing for my kid than for me, I will
Mm.
admit. I love sleep. And so for me, and I've always loved sleep, even as like a little kid, it's bedtime. Like that's it. It's bedtime. A teenager, people, as teenagers, oh, I'm gonna go out all night, whatever. I'm like, but it's 10 o'clock. It's bedtime. Like I don't. What are you talking about? I am very much in the routine. Bed, go. However, when I go to bed because I'm oh so exhausted, oh so tired, and then I lay there for another 45 minutes because I can't fall asleep. It's super frustrating.
Indeed, indeed. One more similarity, just to bounce off you,
Of
and
course.
that's the social fatigue.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's the
do you find that? I mean, I personally love socializing, but gosh, uh, the energy can really drop off quite quickly, and
yeah.
I need time to recover by myself, and
Yes.
it can appear as rude or antisocial at times, or a
Hmm.
little bit hmm, weird, like a split personality, because one moment you're upbeat and you're in it,
Yes.
and then you need to exit relatively quickly. Your thoughts on that?
100% agree with you.
Mm,
And definitely experience that. I will say to myself, I'm like, this is too people-y now. I'm so done with peopling. That's how I word it.
mm,
And my family just has come to known over the years. So, for instance, I'm all about examples because that's what makes it easier to understand. Um, when I would go to my family functions, right from forever in my whole life and up until even now, say Christmas time, you all get together and you have, your five cousins and your six aunts and your whatever, whatever. And it's fun and it's exciting because you're playing and the new stuff and the food and all the things. Um, but like halfway through, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go take a nap. I'm done. And even now, my mom knows you wake up five, and I'm usually the first person up on Christmas. I've even woken my kids up going, I've been waiting for 2 hours for you to wake up. Um, and by noon, I'm like, okay, well, it's time for a nap. I have peopled out. I've done enough. I'm gonna go nap now. Um, and so when I started dating my husband, we would go to his family functions, and I'm like, I am so exhausted right now. Like I've been peopling for 2 hours. Are we done? And it's not, and you're there for another like three. And I'm like, I can't. And so the nice thing is most of like my in-laws' house and his grandma and stuff, they always had two living rooms. I always thought that was the fanciest thing because we never had that growing up. So they'd have like their family room and their living room. And so I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to go in the other room and see who else is there, knowing no one else is there. And then you could just,
And now you can explain it because you know what your brain needs, you know what your body
yeah,
needs. I
exactly.
can relate. I was going to ask you about what projects you're currently passionate about.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So what I'm working on right now actually is turning, I wanted to do something different. I've written a bunch of books and I'll probably write some more books, but I've always been passionate about film. And when I was little, I was going to be a famous actor. Um, Going on people's podcasts is kind of the same thing, right? But so I'm turning one of my books, The Goodbye Too Soon, into a indie film. So I'm really
Wow.
excited for this. I've written the first five scenes, at least drafted. I definitely have to go back and add stuff, obviously, but the first five scenes are drafted now. And it's about my brother's death by a drug overdose. And it's from my perspective. It's from the sister's
Mm.
perspective and what has to happen. And I think not only is it going to be a fun project for me, but it's such an important message because it's an epidemic out there with drugs and fentanyl. So it's really interesting. My best friend, we haven't decided what her title is going to be, but she's doing all the research because I hate research. So I'm doing the script and she is trying to do the research, figuring out, are there certain permits we need for filming in certain locations where we have a university and a college in our area. So, and I know the college has a film program. Maybe they need volunteer hours or something to do with their school. So we're trying to figure out all those little pieces. And then in the hopefully not too distant future, I'm going to be starting up a Kickstarter to raise the funds to get this movie off the ground. And
Wow.
so everybody should keep their eyes peeled for that. If you follow me on anything, you'll be able to see that. But very excited for this project.
Right. I would like to ask you, Randy-Lee, what is a strategy or a tool or a shift of thinking that helps you work with your brain and not against it? So whether it's a mindset or a routine or any sort of strategy that supports you, whether it's managing your energy or focus or emotional health, what is it? Hint me.
Yes. So many things come to mind, but I'm going to say just the routine. So
Mhm.
literally having a routine and keeping with it. So um, most people will have like a morning routine or an evening routine. When you have autism or ADHD, if something throws that morning routine off, the
Mm.
whole day gets thrown off. So I try very hard to mitigate things that might influence a change in the morning routine. So my morning routine, I get up usually about 7 when my alarm goes off, and my dogs are then going, "Oh, we have to go pee." They go out, I go to the bathroom, then I make my breakfast. Well, my mom also tends to get up anywhere between 6:30 and 7:30. My mom lives with me. Um, and I try really hard to be like, "Mom, you need to get out of my way." Because you're going to throw off my routine. And for the most part, she's pretty good because, I mean, she raised me. She knows she doesn't want to mess that up. Um, but yeah, if something was to mess up that routine of then, okay, now I've made my smoothie. Now I have to get out all of our vitamins and medicines because I put my daughter's in her little container. I get out my little container. Um, if something messes that up, I will forget. And I mean, medication is
Mm.
one of the most important things. She can't forget hers. I can't forget mine, right? So it's having that routine and sticking to it and letting the people around you in the house know what that routine is.
Mm.
Like for my daughter, hers is literally written out and posted on the kitchen wall above the coffee maker so that everyone knows exactly what's happening for her. Um, I don't write out mine. I just tell people you're in my way. You need to move.
So what happens? Do you have a plan B insofar as you know you need a routine and you're doing your darndest to stick to it? From time to time, there will be a change, whether it's a phone call or a knock at the door or an early start for whatever reason. Do you have a strategy for your plan B should your morning
Uh,
routine go sort of belly up?
yeah, I want to say yes, but honestly, no. I rely on it so heavily. Now, it does happen. 100% that it totally happens sometimes. Um, and in those cases, I try to, as soon as possible, get back on track. Also,
Mm.
music. Music is a big help because it keeps the brain just in a happier place to begin with. So then you can deal with things as they come up. So finding a great
Mm.
playlist that you love can just bring out your endorphins, which means when something deviates or something is upsetting, you already got some little endorphins going so you can manage it better.
Mm. That's really interesting too, because I think even just the design of tracks or an album or whatever it may be, it's a continuation of something. So even if you're distracted, the music keeps playing, which is a
Exactly.
is a nice sort of parallel of almost pace setting. That's right. That's right. I need to go back on track again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just a sideways thought there. For those who are feeling different but haven't quite got a language for it or can pinpoint exactly what it is, based on your lived experience, what would you want them to hear?
It's okay to be different. In fact, living outside the box is far more entertaining than living inside the box. I wish somebody would have told me that when I was younger. But on a more serious note, if you really do feel that way, I mean, online assessments are a fun way to get started. So nobody knows that what you're thinking, because often that can be scary to tell somebody, but you can maybe start to get some answers for yourself. And then if it does seem like maybe you might have autism, you might have ADHD, and these assessments are coming back and going, yeah, I'm pretty sure you do. Um, if you're comfortable with it, you can take the next step and go and talk to a doctor and see about getting a diagnosis. Because I mean, medication can help. Um, might be the route for you, might not be the route for you. But I mean, the only way you're going to know is if you try and if you talk to somebody. So I would say first, it's totally cool that you are different because that's what makes the world go round and makes it much more fun. And then start small, do a little assessment, and then go big afterwards when you're comfortable and ready.
Randi-Lee, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. And it was lovely to bounce between the ADHD and autism and the similar traits. And I know it's fascinating for many people that have been diagnosed as one or the other. And of course, those that have the two together. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.